Today I thought I will talk a little bit about this wonderful classic in Islamic mystical literature called The Conference of the Birds, written by Attar, 12th, 13th century. And this book used to be, you might say, required reading for Sufis. Conference of the Birds. It's a story of our lives. You know the wonderful poetry by Hafiz who says, "Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need for God absolutely clear." Rumi says, we reach a point in our lives, we exclaim, "I am sick and tired of mortal kings. I want to see your face, your light." We feel this unease within us. We want to connect with something higher than human personality. So the birds, they felt this unease and they gathered together in a conference. Life is good, but it's not satisfying. And we know if we only met that king, if we went to his abode, we'd be happy. And they meet this bird called the hoopoe bird, who is a symbol of a prophet. He says, "I know of that abode. I know of that place. My soul has glimpsed that Simurg, that king." And all the birds, they begin to chirp and twitter, they jump up and down. "Let's go right now to that place. We want to go right there." I say, no, we want to go there right now. And then he begins to explain why we have to wait. He says, "The journey is long, and the sea is deep. One must have the heart of a lion. There are 7 valleys." And as he began to describe the valleys, slowly the birds began to say, I'm having second thoughts. So they began to make excuses. So as a part of Sufi inquiry, the question is, "Jamal, which bird are you? What's your excuse?" Let me just give you 2 or 3 excuses. The nightingale says, I'm so deeply in love with the rose, I can't even think about myself. The rose is enough for me. I don't need to go there. Then, of course, the hoopoe bird says, "You who are so dazzled by that which is only on the exterior, forsake the rose and blush for yourself. The rose blushes every spring and then smiles no longer till the next spring." In other words, as the Buddha would say, forsake pleasure so you might attain bliss. Then comes a peacock, turning this way and that way, displaying all its beautiful colors like a bride. And the peacock says, this earthly paradise is enough for me. It's enough that I reach only the king's gate. And once again, the answer, the Most High is a vast ocean. Why are you so attached to just one drop of water? Like Rumi says, for God's sake, for God's sake, for God's sake, sell and buy at once. Where will you find a market like this? This divine exchange for one little seed, the entire rose garden. For one little breath, the divine breath. For God's sake, sell and buy at once. Let me give you one more. The sparrow, who says, I would love to go there, but I am so feeble, I am frail, I don't have the strength. I don't even have the strength of an ant. How can I ever reach there? And the hoopoe comes down very hard saying, "You sparrow, you pretend to be feeble. Even in your humility, I can see vanity and pride. Close your mouth and step forward." So the journey begins. The valley of the quest. What is that about? It's about this feeling we have within us. As Joseph Campbell would say, I want to follow my bliss. Like the wonderful Nobel Prize winner Tagore, 20th century, from India, who says, we spend our lives stringing and unstringing our instruments. But the song I came here to sing remains unsung. The Quran says, you will reach a point in your life where you say, my life, my prayers, my sacrifices, my living, my dying are all for you, my Creator, my Sustainer. That's the valley of the quest. Then comes the valley of love. It's a cliche, we know this. It's all about love. Being loved, not being loved, and wanting to be loved. That summarizes life. The rest is all posturings. But the great sages say, we don't quite understand love. What we think of love actually are what Rumi calls degrees of domination and servitude. He says that's not love. Love is something which arrives complete, like the moon in the sky, the sun. But of course, to attain that state, all the great mystics have said, it has to be rooted in a human experience of love, not the intellectual understanding of it. There's a very famous story of a very well-known disciple, very advanced, who goes to a Sufi master. He wants to be initiated. A very well-known, spacious Sufi master, and he's ready for the test so he can be initiated. And the only question the Sufi master asks him is, have you ever been in love? The disciple thinks, what a strange question, earthly question. He says, no. You just go back, fall in love, and come back, because if you never experienced love, you're a bird without wings. And the story is, he did fall in love in a natural way, and he became one of the greatest Sufis of our times. I'm thinking of a very concrete example, which has always stayed with me, about an experiment about 2 decades ago. As you know, we use animals in a cruel way for our own benefit. These were rabbits in a university who were stacked in cages, and a particular assistant would go and feed them very rich, fatty foods to see how quickly they develop cholesterol. And so this went on for quite a few weeks, and sure enough, all the rabbits, except for one, developed a lot of cholesterol. And they wondered, what is it about this rabbit that gets no significant increase in cholesterol? Is that something was wrong in the scientific experiment? They couldn't figure it out. So they examined it very closely. Turns out that the assistant who would feed them this food would feed all the rabbits the food, but the one which was at eye level, she would open the door, take out the rabbit, put it next to a heart, and just pet the rabbit. And that one never developed that significance of cholesterol in the body. So just leave with that story for a little while. Then comes the valley of what is called valley of understanding, higher awareness. The Quran says of knowledge, we have given you but a little. The Quran says of everything created, we have created opposites. So you might know only God is one. And those insights about knowledge, about awareness, the one which is really splashes in my chest is the one which says, we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. Or Prophet Muhammad who says, move from a knowledge of the tongue to a knowledge of the heart. The Quran says, the heart never falsified what it saw. So what are some wonderful insights about knowledge, about awareness, about higher understanding? So the Buddha was once asked, how do you describe a person who is the most holy, the most spiritual? The Buddha said, a minute has 60 seconds, An hour has 60 minutes, a minute has 60 seconds. The person who is most aware of every microsecond is the one who is most spiritual. So what are some, for me, the greatest insights about awareness? Number one, which you know by heart, the law of the created world, which says, whosever approval you seek, you are their prisoner. Can I become aware of that? And of course, you know it by heart, the answer, the Sufi answer, simply choose your jailers with care and deliberation. The second one, also law of the created world, which Hinduism and Buddhism, they focus a lot on, and all other religions, that because it's a world of opposites, no matter how noble your actions, no matter how holy your words, some will praise and some will blame. Some will praise and some will blame. Can I really understand that, accept that, and live with that? Just live with that. In the law of the created world, no matter how holy your actions, no matter how noble your deeds, some will praise and some will blame. Another one is just become conscious, aware through experience that in those mysterious realms, what is called the invisible world, there's also traffic and trade. I love Rumi's insight, which some of you again have told me by heart, you know it. Flee not the invisible world, for it is a place of income. And this visible world, this place of more or less, is a place of expenditure. Maybe just one more, one of my favorites. If you really understand this, I feel if I understand this, I will really take what is called the right action. The Sufi who knows is a servant of one who does not know. I repeat, the Sufi who knows is a servant of the one who does not know. You got it. You got it, yeah. Okay, let's move on. The valley of independence and attachment, or detachment, or unattachment. The valley of independence and unattachment or detachment, whatever that means to you. I love the Buddha when he says, you've attained a certain spiritual state if you find yourself in the center of the wheel of life. The wheel goes up, the wheel goes down, it doesn't matter. You're in the center of the wheel. I love that Hindu metaphor from Bhagavad Gita that says that we are like, each one of us is like two birds on the branch of a tree. One bird is pecking away at the fruit. The fruit could be sweet, the fruit could be bitter, that's life. But you're also the other bird, just observing on the branch, just witnessing. Just witnessing. That's that detachment. The higher self within us being able to simply witness. And of course, you've heard many times that Buddhist story, a true story, they say, of this monk on a moonlit night when his house is burned to the ground. And because he has equanimity, because he has this independence and a sense of detachment, because he has that, even though his house is completely burned down on a moonlit night, all he does is looks at the moon and says, finally a perfect view of the moon at night. Then comes the valley of unity. The Quran says, every soul where you turn is the face of Allah. We are also interconnected. Rumi says, "O Allah, O God, you've created this I, you, we, they, just to play the game of adoration with yourself." And of course, the story we have said many times of that monk who's giving a huge sermon to a huge congregation, huge meaning really a most important sermon. And as he's just about to start his sermon, it's out in the open in the gardens, a bird in the tree begins to chirp. And the monk stops talking. The entire congregation is very quiet, listening intently. And finally, when the bird stops chirping, the monk steps down, saying, "The sermon has been delivered." We're all so interconnected. Every soul where you turn is the face of Allah. If only I had that awareness within me. Then comes the valley of astonishment. Things are not what they seem to be. You know my favorite verse of the Quran. It says, if all the trees in the universe became pens, all the 7 oceans became ink, you began to write out the mysteries of God, and the oceans were depleted, you replenished them, you wouldn't come close to describing a fraction of the fraction of the fraction of God's mysteries. And of course, I never stop quoting Rumi when he says, "Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment." Cleverness might be opinion, judgment. Bewilderment might be naked vision. But the greatest mystery for many seekers is, I think, summarized for me in the verse of the Quran where God says, "We are closer to you than your jugular vein." We are closer to you than your jugular vein. One great mystic says the most astonishing thing for him was that for 30 years he had been seeking God, and he finally realized that God is the seeker and I'm the one being sought. Again, the mystics. Not only does the thirsty seek water, water also seeks the thirsty. There's a beautiful story of Rabia, that beloved female saint, 8th, 9th century. She was walking by and she saw this very famous Sufi master teaching to his students, and he was saying to the students, if you want to get close to God, never stop knocking on his door. Keep knocking on the door. Keep knocking on the door. The door will surely open. Rabia said, "Brother, when was the door ever closed?" And the teacher bowed. Then comes the valley of death. It's death where things don't end, it just continues. I love that wonderful saying from the Quran which says, "O serene soul, return to your Lord, pleased and pleasing in His sight. Join my righteous servants and enter His paradise." Therefore, the great teachers are saying every single death is so intrinsically magical, beautiful. You have no idea where you're transported to. How marvelous was the way you quit this world, says Rumi. The way you ruffled your feathers, and breaking free of your cage, you took off for the soul's world. Again, you know this by heart. Many of you have quoted this to me. A love-sick nightingale among owls. A love-sick nightingale among owls. You caught the scent of roses and you flew to the rose garden. So now to end the story of the birds, as they came closer to this rose garden, to mystery, to presence, someone greeted them, tested them, And then veils after veils were removed, and lights upon lights upon lights were manifested. And as they were ushered into the presence, they felt this unspeakable spaciousness, joy, fulfillment. And as they gazed, they saw, they felt, they experienced the presence. But as they looked at themselves and others, they also saw and experienced the presence. And what struck them most of all was this great mystery. And a voice from within, from outside, from here, from there said, "The Son of my Majesty is a mirror. The shadow was lost in the sun, and that is all." And the story concludes. And the insight is, but the journey continues. But it is so mysterious. It is so indescribable, so unspeakable. If one tried to explain it, it's like probably what Lao Tzu says. Those who know do not say, and those who say do not know. It's unable to be articulated what is meant by the journey continues in those incredible realms. Last night I was thinking, what is a good to end with a story that is not so abstract? And I read a story which one of my Interfaith amigos had sent, which really touched him. And as I began to reflect upon it, I have it here with me, it really has elements of this journey. It's a very human story you might be familiar with, but it has the elements of the Conference of the Birds if you reflect on it. It's about somebody I had not heard of. I asked my family and they said, oh, they all knew about it. Maurice Sendak, who wrote this book Where the Wild Things Are. I, of course, being only 60 years old, I had no idea. Didn't have an experience. And it's a story about how a girl who's dying of cancer, the doctors invite Maurice Sendak to visit her because he has been told that she really is a fan of Maurice Sendak. So he enters and she's sitting in the room, and it says here, he walks into a room, she's sitting on the bed in glasses and pigtails, and a mother is sitting beside her. And as he comes in the room, he extends his hand. She doesn't take it. He says, I understand you like wild things. She says, who told you that? The mother invites him to sit with them on the bed, and he opens her book and asks her if she would like him to draw a wild thing in the front. Whatever, she says. But as he begins to draw, she inches closer to him. And this is how it unfolds. He goes on in the book. I started to draw very slowly so that she would be drawn in, and she began to relent. And she leaned in on me slightly, and then she started to laugh. Then when she saw more of the drawing emerge, she said, are you sure you illustrated this book? That doesn't look like a good wild thing. I said, do you want to help? And she said, well, okay. And she took the book and started to draw on it, and I started to draw on it, and now she's laughing, and she has very slowly slid closer so that one hip is on my leg, and she's leaning comfortably on my shoulder. She has gradually made it into a relationship. And we're laughing. I look this way, and there's Mom. And she's smiling, smiling, smiling. And she's so happy her daughter is acting decently. Now we're laughing, and she's, why do we do this? And gradually she has her arm around my neck, and I'm acting very cool. But then I notice out of the corner of my eye something that is very terrible, which is that her mother cannot control crying. Because obviously the picture she saw was the artist and a very young daughter who is going to die. Having this scene, memorizing it. It is cutting her alive. I couldn't do anything, so I took my eyes away from the mother. I went back to the girl. She's here, I'm here, and then I noticed that the arm that has been around my shoulders suddenly falls away, and it crawls across the bed to her mother's arm, and then down onto her mother's hand, and she clasps it tight. And I thought that this child was comforting the mother for something this child knew was inevitable. And the other side of her was laughing and joking with me. And I don't know how to end this story. So the truth is, there is no end to this story. And I'd just like you to be with that for a few moments. Just close your eyes and just be with it. The real story is there is no end to this story. It's mysterious.